Hi, I'm Nurse Attorney Laurie Elston. Thank you for joining me on this introduction to legal nurse consulting. I'm going to introduce you to this profession and tell you what it is you need to know to be competent and competitive in the field. So let me get started with my slideshow, and I will be happy to answer any questions you have after we're done. I think I'll start by giving you a little information about my background as a nurse attorney. And I did 7 years of work as a registered nurse in a large acute care medical center. I even worked as an assistant head nurse for a period of time. And then I became an attorney, and I've worked now over 30 years in that capacity, initially in Seattle, Washington for a decade, and then I've been in California for over 20 years. I've also been a municipal court pro tem judge, and I taught in the paralegal program at the University of Washington. So I use all that experience in putting together the programs that I teach so that you have the best of both the medical or clinical information as well as the legal expertise that you need. In terms of defining a legal nurse consultant, it's very broad. Basically, it's a registered nurse who gains additional education about legal matters and how to review records and analyze them for certain legal issues. And usually that's negligence or malpractice. So you need, as part of your LNC training, a good program that is going to teach you the legal terminology, the legal processes, and of course, the best person to do that is someone who has expertise in the legal field, such as an attorney. You're going to need good analytical skills because attorneys analyze these records for negligence, and then we have to prove that in court. And you need strong communication skills. We do a lot of communicating, both verbally and in writing, so in reports or in briefs. And so you really need to have strong skills in both those areas. And I include that in my LNC program. In terms of your background, really nurses from any background can function as a behind-the-scenes legal nurse consultant, meaning you're not testifying as an expert witness. If you're going to be testifying as an expert witness, then you will need to have a experience in the particular area that the defendant has the malpractice case in. So if it's an ED case, then it might involve an ED nurse. If it's a labor and delivery issue, then it may involve a labor and delivery nurse, etc. Because we have to, in these court cases, have someone provide an expert opinion that has the same or similar background as the defendants. And attorneys don't want to take the time to teach you. What is it that is negligence? What are the elements? What's an affidavit? These are things you need to hit the ground running, knowing and understanding. And that's what I do in my program. I teach you those parts of law and the terminology you need to be able to communicate well with attorneys. And a formal program gives you the skills you need in a comprehensive way because you want to be focused on just those things that you need to have familiarity with. In terms of the different practice areas, LNCs can work on a wide variety of cases, certainly any med-mal cases, personal injury, product liability. Nurses are especially adept at that because all the medical device cases involve medical and nursing issues. The toxic tort cases, workers' comp, forensic. So you can see there's a lot of different areas that you can be involved in as an LNC. Some of the services you'll typically be providing to attorneys include organizing and analyzing the medical records, especially with the electronic health records. They are so disjointed and so voluminous that attorneys do not want to take the time to go through the thousands of pages of medical records and come up with the facts that they need to focus on. So that's the job of the nurse LNC, and that's something that you have particular expertise with. You will frequently be asked to prepare a chronology of the events, and that's gathering factual information from the records that are significant to the issues in the lawsuit. So if it's negligence, you're going to be looking for, did they breach the standard of care? Did that breach cause injury? And part of analyzing standard of care is doing some literature research and determining if there's guidelines that were breached and what caused the injuries. You can do a lot more than that when you get some experience. You can help attorneys develop questions to ask the opposing experts in deposition. You can help with trial strategy, help prepare demonstrative evidence. And what that means is literally evidence that we'll use at trial to demonstrate what we're talking about. So if the vital signs, for example, was an important issue in the lawsuit, then you might put a graph together that shows what the patient's vital signs were so that the jury can see what transpired. And you certainly can work with other expert witnesses that the attorney has working on the case and will know the lingo in terms of talking about the medical issues. There's a number of different settings that LNCs work in, not just law firms, but government agencies usually have a legal department. Insurance companies need somebody that has that dual knowledge of nursing, medicine, and basic law. Healthcare facilities may use you in their risk management departments. Some LNCs set up their own companies and businesses where they hire other LNCs. So you can subcontract for those nurses. And really, any and every business has a legal department. So some LNCs, for example, I know one that got hired by an elevator company to handle all of their personal injury cases involving people that had fallen in the elevator or on escalators, which they also operated. And you're perfect for analyzing what injuries occurred, were they pre-existing, and were they caused by this fall? And that is why your expertise is really needed in litigation. One of the things I spend quite a bit of time teaching in my program is how and where to market your services, because they aren't going to necessarily put out ads saying they're looking for an LNC. In fact, the last study I read about a year ago said that 80% of attorneys have never heard of an LNC. So that means you're going to have to explain what that is to an attorney when you interact with them. And that's not hard to do, but you want to understand what the lay of the land is, so you know that when you look at ads, if they're looking for your skills, even though they don't call it a legal nurse consultant, that's going to be a fit for you. And I teach you about that. There's a lot of questions about the different LNC programs and certifications. And basically, there are no regulations because it's not a licensed position. So it's not like nursing in that way. Instead, you're really acting as a consultant or expert witness regarding your nursing expertise. That you do have a license in. So there is no additional certification required or needed. There are a couple organizations that do offer this certification, but it's completely voluntary. And one of those, the American Association of Legal Nurse Consultants, requires that you work for a couple of years before you can take their certification exam. And if you want to do that, I the exam is based on the textbook they publish, and I teach that textbook in my course. So you will be fully prepared to take the exam should you choose to do so. Some other private organizations charge as much as $500 a year to keep your certification with them. And I think that is far more than you should be paying and unnecessary. So I try and help you navigate these different programs. I've had a lot of nurses take my course that have gone to other LNC programs. And I'll share with you in a minute the some of the comments they have as to why my program was exactly what they needed as compared to prior programs they had taken. And I am the only live nurse attorney program where you can ask me questions monthly, and I will be happy to answer those. So my program that I've put together from teaching nurses about legal nurse consulting for decades now includes a guide to becoming an LNC, a legal terminology guide, so that you understand the key terms that you're going to need to know. And then I have 3 days of online training video modules. And those include not only myself lecturing, but also Rike Restrepo, who is a nurse expert witness. And she has reviewed over 600 malpractice cases in her career. So extremely well versed in what is needed to be in this role. And we also share in that program some of the clips of students that we're working with at the time. So it's a really interesting video process to go through. I also give you a 300 plus page LNC resource notebook, which has all the templates that you need. And I have them in the order that you're going to need them. And I'll show you the index to that resource notebook in just a moment. In addition, I have spent the last couple of years putting together 8 advanced LNC workshops. And these are workshops that are at least 2 hours long, where I delve into key topics. And this is in addition to teaching basic LNC work. And each of those workshops includes an average of 50 pages of written material. So you will not be short on information. And what's key about that is that these are the reports, the retainer agreements, and all the other documents you're going to need to practice as an LNC. And if you had to sit down and write those documents from scratch, it would take you many years. So this saves you hundreds of hours of work and is taught in a very fun and understandable way. I give you business resources because some of these programs don't address the business aspects of being an LNC. But because it is your own independent business, you need some of that information. I talk a lot about the resources and marketing plans that you need. I have 2 of the advanced LNC workshops just on the topic of marketing, because it's not the kind of marketing you might do as a nurse. And the job lists that you're used to looking at as a nurse aren't applicable here. So this is something that's going to be new for you. And I spend the time that's needed to help you learn that. And as I said, I have monthly question and answer mentoring sessions where we can talk one-on-one and get you the personal mentoring you need. It also includes discounts on all the other courses on the website. And because I've been an approved CE provider by the California Board of Nursing for the last couple decades, I can also award you 60 CE credits for taking this course. So a lot of advantages. And here is the resource notebook index. As you can see from the titles, I start out with information about legal nurse consulting, what research sites you want to use, and then I start giving you forms, case screening forms, checklists, sample medical record summaries, so you can see how those summaries are written, letter summaries, and then longer reports, because there's a variety of types that are used. And I even include a motor vehicle accident screening, because there's a lot of personal injury work out there and a lot of personal injury firms that will hire you. So you don't want to limit yourself to just med mal. And then I give you actual nursing reports put together by a nurse expert witness that show you exactly what needs to be in your reports. And this, again, will save you years of work. And there are legal requirements as to what has to be in your report based on federal rules, and specifically the rules of evidence. So if you don't have certain things in your report, they're going to be deficient. So everything I teach you is geared to get you started with attorneys without a lot of stumbles and mistakes that will cause the attorney to question whether they perhaps want to use you as their LNC. And the next section is some sample jury reports. There's, again, a number of different cases. There's a declaration, so you can see how a nurse expert would write a declaration. The next section is on writing skills. As I promised earlier, I'm going to insert some writing skills throughout the process, because I find that that's an area that nurses need some help with. Frequently, they haven't had a lot of writing courses and they're lacking some writing skills. And because attorneys are very good at writing, because that's what we spend a lot of time doing, researching and writing briefs and other documents. We're very good at it, and there's a lot of focus on details. And you're probably not used to that. So you're going to have to develop some of those skills. And then I go into the next section, which is marketing. I give you sample letters that you can send out, sample fee schedule there, and then how to do the so-called elevator speech, which is your little 30-second introduction to attorneys as to who you are, what an LNC is, and what you offer. Because you're going to need to offer your services to attorneys that you meet in order to get work. So that's a quick overview. I have 3 different options for my programs. One of them is self-study, and that's very limited because it doesn't include mentoring, but it is the least expensive. So perhaps for people that have some experience. The middle one includes monthly mentoring. Again, where you have access to me each month to ask any questions you have about the materials as you're going through, and gives me a chance to give you some personalized guidance, which is absolutely unique. There is no other program where you will have a nurse attorney do that. And then the third program I call Get It All, because it includes all 8 of the advanced LNC workshops. And I've gotten so much positive feedback on the workshops and requests to include that I put that program together as well. And I do have installment payments available, both through the office or on the website. It's through PayPal, where you can divide it up into monthly payments. So that's a nice option. And these are the details of each of those programs. And this is on the website, nursinglawcenter.com. And you can go through and see what's included with each of those programs that I've just got done describing. And these are the 8 workshops. And they start with writing an LNC resume because it should be different from your nursing resume. And some nurses don't realize that unless perhaps they've taken a course. And because it's the first thing that the attorney's going to see, it really has to be perfect. They can't have any grammatical errors, any writing errors. So that requires some focus and some detail. The second workshop is on writing your fee schedules and retainer agreements. You have no idea how important that is. I see from LNCs in different online groups that they sometimes have trouble collecting their fees from attorneys. Sometimes the attorneys are slow to pay. So you really need to have a structured contract and a system for how you're billing. And I give you that information. Third workshop is on writing a cover letter or email to go along with your resume. Fourth one focuses on developing your analytical skills for negligence. What are you going to look for in cases? Because if your analysis isn't good and you tell the attorney there is negligence when there isn't, or vice versa, that there isn't negligence, but there was, they will never hire you again. And attorneys do a lot of word of mouth. So if they come across a good LNC or nurse expert witness, they pass that information on, sometimes in writing in entire legal groups, to other attorneys. So it's vitally important that your first interactions with attorneys go well. And so I will make sure that you understand how to analyze those cases. And then writing expert witness reports. That's also a really big area. And in that workshop, I give you 7 different reports, and these are actual reports in actual cases. One nurse attorney out there who teaches an LNC course has never actually practiced. And so she includes some sample reports that aren't very realistic. And all of mine come from my litigation experience and research and actual cases, because those are the best preparation for what is really going to be needed. And in the 6th workshop, I teach you how to do some chronologies and graphs and timelines. So we get into a little bit of the tech side of um, how to set up a graph for chronology. And I show you how to do that in Word and some other software programs. And it's very easy to create timelines. And these things are an impressive addition to your reports. Attorneys will really appreciate it if you're talking about something in your report that's a key issue. If you can depict that on a timeline or a graph that highlights your point. And that will get you the A+ when you're submitting your report. And then the last 2 workshops are on marketing. And there's quite a bit to learn there. You have to have an online presence these days. It really is required for any kind of marketing to attorneys, because one of the first things they're going to do is Google you and see what comes up. So you have to be aware of that and ready to market in that setting. Here's some of the evaluations I've gotten from people who have taken my course. One said that I provided everything they needed to start an LNC business, and that Rita Kay, the nurse expert witness, was a wonderful model and mentor, and that she thought the class was great. The next one is one of those nurses who had taken another program taught by a nurse attorney, and she said, just one day of my course was worth more than the 5 days she spent taking the other program, and that the other program cost 5 times more than my course did. And they weren't even allowed to ask any questions. So my course is very affordable by comparison to the other programs out there. And it is so focused on what you need for actual interactions with an attorney that people find it more useful in entering this field than taking some of these other programs. I've also gotten feedback from a number of nurses who have taken LNC programs that are offered at universities and then taken my program. And one of them said I was the real deal, because there's a difference between who's teaching at a university versus a litigator who's actually in the courtroom like I am. And that's a pretty big gap. And they didn't get a lot of useful tools to get started. It was more theory based. So I've really put a lot of thought into this. And the last valuation comment here was from a nurse who started consulting on wound care cases. And she had done that for over a decade, so very experienced. And she did this without an LNC program. And she said during that decade, she developed her own formats and timelines and reports, and said, I sure wished I'd known about you and this course and the AALNC chapters, which is something I tell you about in the program. It would have made my life a lot easier. Though I already have a source for case referrals, I wanted to improve my skills with this course, and I did. Thanks. And that was Mary. And, I took that as a huge compliment, because she's very experienced. She's already been testifying for 10 years. And yet she learned things she didn't know by taking my course. That's the level of depth and detail I go into. And it also shows you that this program will save you so much time in creating your own documents. So there is definitely a need for LNCs. A fairly recent study said the salary range was from $125 an hour to $175 per hour. And if you're an expert, it's double that, at least, if not more, particularly if you become a sought after expert witness. And I teach how to become an expert witness. None of the other programs do that. And that is very different. You have to market very differently as an expert witness than you do as just a behind the scenes LNC. The program that I provide really focuses on making sure that your first interaction with an attorney is a great impression in terms of your documents and in terms of what you convey verbally. And as a special offer today, I'm offering an additional $200 off my programs. And if you go to the website, all you have to do is enter the code LNC 200, and you will receive that $200 additional discount, even if the program is on sale, automatically then when you check out. So if you have any further questions, I'm at the end of my introduction slideshow, and we'll be happy to answer those for you now. Thank you for joining me.